feel it's necessary to yak about bullshit in order to be comfortable?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Welcome back, everyone. It's South of the Border. I'm your Reluctant Gr1ngo, back again with another episode. It's Wednesday. It's our Wednesday show. So, as we know, or as you may know, we do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we've got plenty of news to talk about today. It's still the big, with all the other things going on in the United States or around the world, it seems like still the big issue is the one big, beautiful bill. And more news keeps coming out about it, and more controversy over it. And we've spent a lot of time on this channel actually reading through the bill. So if you've been with me going through that, then you know that there's a lot of stuff in this 1,100 page monstrosity. And now Elon Musk seems to have given his opinion. And I guess Elon Musk has now gone from darling of the right to enemy of the right, I guess, with one criticism of the bill. And he's just like anybody else, especially someone that rich with that many companies. He has his own agenda, and there's things in that bill, and we'll kind of cover that a little bit, that he probably doesn't like because they either hurt his business or they go against his own values. So either way, he's become a little bit of a pariah, more so now than what he was before. And I think it's a good thing that he's gotten out of the administration. Just let him go back and do the work that he started with his companies. I think he's as brilliant as he might be. He's just not a politician, and that's just not his world to be in. So with that, the Trump administration has released on the official White House website a tax calculator for you to see exactly how much you will save with the one big beautiful bill. So I figured, why not? Let's use it. Let's check out this whole tax calculator and see what it is. And let's see exactly what we would save. Oh, there he is. We are preparing your tax cuts. Now, this is the actual whitehouse.gov. This is their website. This is approved by them. The one big beautiful bill, and there's the president. It's an odd picture. It's a little weird picture. I said to myself, that's an odd angle to shoot him at, I guess. He looks a little uncomfortable there, but then again, maybe that's what they wanted. It looks like someone cropped it. It looks like that's his head on somebody else's body. That doesn't look like his body. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Backed by American industry. So first things first, before we even get to the calculator, it used to be that any bill that was backed by American industry and businesses all over the place, we used to, as normal people, would go, that's probably not good for us everyday normal people. But apparently, I guess that script is flipped, and that's fine. Okay, sure. I got nothing against American business. I love American business. I participated in American business, and it gave me the life that I have and gave me the ability to raise a family that I have. And so I got nothing against it. So, all right. Tax-free tips and overtime calculator. So the calculator is basically this. It doesn't really apply to you if you're salary. If you're salary, you get nothing, basically. Your taxes are going to stay what they are right now because the Trump tax cuts that were originally put in place in 2017 are going to continue if the one big beautiful bill passes. That's fine. Okay, fine. You might be happy with that. You might not be happy with that. There are some extensions on tax credits and increases, such as like the child tax credit, things like that. There are some eliminations of certain taxes. So if you spend some time buying like energy efficient appliances or an electric vehicle, all those tax credits go away. All of that goes away. We've already covered that. So there'll be no more of that. There's going to be limitations on mortgage interest reductions, but there'll be additions of you'll be able to not pay taxes on your car loan interest, which I don't see as you pay way less on car loan interest than you do on mortgage interest. So if you've ever owned a home, that's just what it is. So, but if you don't own a home and all you have is a car loan, then maybe you're happy. Again, it's really, this tax bill is in the eye of the beholder, right? It's either a great thing, depending on where you are in your own situation, in your life, in your financials, and what you're looking towards in the future, or it's not a good thing, depending on where you are and what you think and what you hold as valuable. Now, we've covered the whole Medicaid thing and the whole Medicare thing. And listen, folks, Medicare is getting cut. That's just, it's getting cut. All right. So anybody who tells you up until the president, when he says, well, we're not cutting Medicaid, they're cutting Medicaid. It literally said, we covered this a week ago, 2 weeks ago. In the bill, it actually cuts Medicaid. So, but we'll get to that in a second. But here's this. So if you, let's say you make, let's say $620 you take home each week. Say that's your take home pay. I don't know. I'm just throwing in a random number. Okay. But you're a waitress or you're a waiter or you work somewhere where there's tips, right? You're a bartender. I don't know. And you get, I don't know, let's say, I mean, when I was a waiter, I used to make around, I mean, on a good night, on a good week, I could make $300 in tips. All right. So let's say your weekly tip a month is $300. And let's say you put in some overtime, you put in about, let's say $100 worth of overtime. All right. So what that's going to do, it's going to save you $49. So if this one big, beautiful bill passes, and again, here's my thing. They could have just passed a single bill that said no tax on tips. And then they could have passed a single bill that said no tax on overtime. Instead of including it in this thing. Why didn't they do that? Because they wanted to show offsets in some of the other things that they're increasing. I get it. It's a sleight of hand trick with politics and legal writing. I get it. So anyways, so your yearly savings will be $2,527. And if you're a waiter or a waitress or a bartender or whatever you do, you know, maybe you're a limo driver, I don't know, an Uber driver, you know, tips, things like that, right? This is a good thing. You can't argue that, right? Obviously, if that's the way it works out, that's a good thing. Now, this is pretty basic, right? Again, the one big beautiful bill is 1,116 pages long. There's definitely things in there you're going to have to pay for. So it's not like you're going to get an extra check every year for $2,527. But here's the thing. Let's say you're someone who works salary. I used to work salary. When I was a manager at a Target, I worked salary, right? And it was mandatory that you worked 60 hours a week, not 40. That was our schedule. We worked 60 hours a week. So you didn't get overtime for that, and there certainly weren't any tips. So let's say you make $1,000 a week, or thereabouts. Let's just kind of right there. There we go. A little sensitive, this thing. All right, I'll say, right? What do you save? Nothing. So again, it's in the eye of the beholder, this bill. Some people are going to be like, yeah, I benefit from it. Some people are like, I don't really benefit from it at all. But this is the calculator that's on the White House website. So if you want to go to it, if you're someone who's affected by this positively and you want to know, hey, exactly how much am I going to benefit from this? You can kind of, you know, get an sort of like an estimate. So it says enter your weekly overtime premium. No, only include the overtime premium amount, i.e., if your pay is $20 an hour and overtime gives you an extra $10 an hour, that's an extra $10 is the premium. Enter the approximate total premiums you earn in this week. That makes sense, right? So there are caveats to this thing, to this little calculator, but I guess it's nice that they put it out there. But again, I think it serves a dual purpose. There are people going to look at it and go, I get shit. I get nothing. But there you go. So they're really pushing this, and they're really, and in their website, they have all their Mythbuster, right? Oh, there we go, there's President. It's very interesting, these Mythbuster things that they have. Technology, economy, government, accountability. Make America healthy again. Let's see here. Briefings and statements. Really wasn't much out, but they have these myths. Are people going? There's a myth out there. People are going to die if they pass the one big beautiful bill. Well, no, people aren't going to die. I mean, they might not get their health care, but they're not going to die. There are massive cuts to health care, so people are going to be in trouble. with that. People are going to have problems with that. But the big deal that's going around and the big controversy besides Elon Musk. Now, let's talk about Elon for a second. All right, there he is getting up the chair and all that from previous. Look, the big beautiful bill cuts all the subsidies, all the incentives tax-wise for the customer, tax-wise for the businesses that make electric vehicles. Well, of course, that's going to hurt Elon's business. Of course, he's not going to be happy about that. And of course, he's going to criticize that. You would too. You'd be like, oh, I was getting all this subsidies and all this stuff, and now it's going away. Sure, it's going away. The other thing, there was a report that Elon wanted to stay on. He didn't want to leave the Trump administration. Unfortunately, the rule is that if you're a special government employee, which is what title Elon was given, the law specifically states that you can only serve up to 130 days. It can't be extended. All right? It cannot. It would take an act of Congress to extend that, to change that. So his last day was his last day, but he was kind of like, I guess he didn't want to leave, even though I think it's probably a good thing that he left. He was banging heads with all sorts of members of the cabinet. It wasn't smooth all the time. Some people really liked him. Some people really didn't. He was a disruptive force. And I think the work that Doge did, whether you can look at it and go, well, that's really good work, or you kind of look at it and go, I don't really like what they did. Either way, whichever side of that fence you fall on, I think we can all agree that Elon was making more headaches with that than what was necessary. He really was. He had good intentions, I think. I want to believe he had good intentions. But it really was a distraction on many, many levels. All right, on many, many levels. So Elon's out. The big, beautiful bill might be in trouble. And really the big thing that's going on right now is the Congressional Budget Office. Now, what the hell is the Congressional Budget Office? All right. So let's let me stop this auto from playing here. All right, this auto playing here. All right, so this is the website for the Congressional Budget Office. And it says it right there, nonpartisan analysis for the U.S. Congress. All right, we can all call bullshit on that. There's no such thing as a government entity or a government office that's nonpartisan. It doesn't exist, folks. You want to know why it doesn't exist? Because it's run by people. People are partisan, right? People are partisan. It's really hard to not be, even unconsciously, you're partisan, right? Even unconsciously, you're going to have partisan leanings one way or the other. But this was created in 1975, the year of my birth. That's right, I'm 50. And it's supposed to be an agency that gives financial scoring and sort of predictions into the future of what certain financial bills that the House comes up with or the Senate comes up with, what their impact will be and all that stuff, okay? So is it really a partisan? Before we get into what they're reporting, is it really a partisan body? I think any body, any government body that uses climate change as a predictor of financial futures, I don't think you can call that a nonpartisan federal agency. Because how the heck do you know what climate change is going to be in 5, 10, 20 years? How can you predict that? You really can't. You can look at it what it might be. Maybe you can look at like what's going on in the current year. You don't know what's going to happen. And you don't know and here's the thing. When they do these reports, they're using predictive models based on what growth is today or the past 6 months or the past year. And growth hasn't been that good. All right. They did a similar report when Trump was first in office in 2017. I want to say, I could be wrong. Could be 2018, but I think it was 2017. When President Trump first had the Congress pass his, what they call, what is now known as the Trump tax cuts. So the Congressional Budget Office came out with this report saying it was going to add something like $1.7 trillion to the national debt. And people are like, oh God, you're going to add 1.7 trillion. And again, this is pre-COVID, which really ballooned the national debt, let's say by 20%. So this is pre-COVID. So we're still like, We still had a chance to maybe get it under control. And so but we passed the tax cuts anyways. And what happened is it did not cause $1.7 trillion in debt. It did not add that. Why? Because the economy began to grow. And that offset, because they couldn't predict the growth of the economy in a proper way, because no one really can. Let's face it. There's so many factors out there. It's a crystal ball, folks. Economics is a crystal ball. So since they could not predict that the economy would grow so well under President Trump in his first couple of years, despite the impeachments and the Russiagate and all that bullshit, they had to come out with this report that said it's gonna balloon the deficit 1.7 trillion, but it was not true. It turns out when you go back and see it, and you compare the numbers of what they reported and the numbers of what was really, really happening, they were wrong. The Congressional Budget Office was wrong. And they've been wrong on many, many occasions. So they have this FAQ page. Climate change. Does the CBO take into account the effects of climate change in its economic predictions? You click on there and they're like, yeah, many factors producing a 10-year or long-term spanning 30 years. How the hell does a bunch of accountants, really, honestly, I mean, if this was a bunch of scientists that were actually doing scientific work, I could listen to them and be like, you might have a point. You might have some reasoning. You might have some scientific fact. There's a bunch of accountants and politicians, partisan people, because people are partisan, taking into account things like this to predict the economic future of the United States. And again, I'm not a climate change denier. I know that the climate changes. I study climatology. I studied climate political policy. But the climate always changes. It's been changing since the Earth was the Earth, right? But how does that get included in CBO projections? And how does it get included with any type of accuracy? Because no one can predict climate change with accuracy. You want to know how I know that? When I was in 5th grade, when I was a little boy in like 1982, 1983, they used to show us movies, these little movies in school, in kindergarten, in 1st and 2nd grade. The polar bears are all going to die because the ice is going to melt in 5 years. I'm thinking to myself, by 1987, there's going to be no more ice? It was 1987. That was a long time ago, folks. It didn't happen then. It hasn't happened now. So again, predictions of climate change, no one can predict climate change. It's alarmist. There's a lot of alarmist language in there. And so the fact that they include that makes me go, okay, the CBO, I don't think they're as accurate as they sort of claim to be, and I don't think they're as nonpartisan as they claim to be. All right. So the Congressional Budget Office, you can actually work for this. Actually, they got a blog. They even have a blog. They have a blog. I wonder how boring that is. All right. How do I find budget up? Right. And they have all their reports. You can actually go on this website. You can read the reports that they send to Congress all the time. Okay. Does the CBO do dynamic analysis? CBO includes effects related to changes in the size of the economy and other macroeconomic variables or dynamic analysis in its baseline budget and economic predictions, but it's always been wrong. Why? In addition to reports about the effects of illustrative policies. Again, it's all economics, it's all accounting. Sometimes it's pretty creative. Pretty creative accounting. So that is the Congressional Budget Office. And so they have, again, here's all their reports. Here's your 10-year budget projections. Okay. You know what they didn't include in their projections? The effects of the tariffs, because you can't understand what those effects are. All right. So they come out and they say, all right, Trump's tax bill, Trump's spending bill to cut taxes by $3.7 trillion and add $2.4 trillion to the deficit, the Congressional Budget Office says. It also says that the bill will lead to 10.9 million more people being uninsured. Again, that's if they go off of the model of the last 6 months. All right. Employment is what it is. If the economy improves and companies are hiring full time, people are going to be able to get their own health insurance. All right. Now, if that 10.9 million is about 1.5 to 2 million illegal aliens who will be losing their health care that are currently on the books in certain states, I'm betting it's more. And I don't want to see anybody lose their health care. health emergencies are the quickest way families and people just in general get bankrupt. So I don't want to see anybody lose their healthcare. Healthcare is getting cut, folks. All right. But the hope, the prediction on the other side, because I like to give both sides, is that the economy improves and people can actually get jobs where they can afford their own healthcare insurance. They don't have to rely on Obamacare or the market exchange or whatever you want to call it at this point in time. But again, this is a prediction. And the last time they predicted that he would add $1.7 trillion to the budget, it didn't come true because the economy did so well. Now, there's money coming in from tariffs. Again, we've yet to see a final report on that or even an initial report on that. We've seen some numbers thrown out there, but nothing official in writing. But this is where I fall. The Congressional Budget Office is just, it's a guideline. You can use it as a guideline. You can use these reports as saying, okay, but they're partisan. People are partisan and they're going to write partisan things. They are going to write partisan things. They are going to include partisan politics within this. It's just, there's no such thing as a non-partisan federal agency. There just hasn't been. It just doesn't exist. It would be a unicorn, folks. It would be a unicorn. So the CBO released its report on Trump's bill on Wednesday. I read through some of it. Actually, if you want to see what the actual, let me just do this for you. If you want to see what it actually, this Excel sheet, this is crazy. Oh, it's opening. Here we go. All right, there you go. This is their Excel spreadsheet. This thing is just, I mean, talk about an eyesore. So it breaks down the budget. It breaks down the one big beautiful bill by committee, what committee did what, and it comes over here and gives you a negative, positive net, what it could be, okay, in tens of millions, if not billions of dollars. All right, it's, and you can go through the full report, which is again is in itself about 100 pages long. But I don't think you want to do that. So, but there it is. I did read through it. And I did understand a good chunk of it. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but not the dumbest. I can read some numbers and kind of figure out where what's going is going. All right. So, with that, it says an additional 10.9 million people without health insurance will be left without health insurance under the bill. Again, not sure exactly, where that number is coming from. They don't explain that in the bill. Including 1.4 million who are in the country without legal status in state-funded programs. I could care less about the 1.4 million people who are here illegally or 2 million people, however many it is. When it comes to the healthcare portion, what I do care about is this. In the big beautiful bill, and we cited this 2 weeks ago, there is a provision. Now, Medicare is paid for partly by the federal government and partly by the state. Right? 50-50. Kind of what the formula is right now. Sometimes it's 60 federal, 40 state, depending on how rich the state is, right? The state of Alabama is going to get a little bit more help from the federal government than, say, the state of California. Even though the state of California, per capita, they suck up a lot of money. All right? Well, the one big beautiful bill said it's going to have sort of a baseline of 25% federal, 75% state. So the state has to come up with a lot more extra money, sometimes up to 25% more money putting into Medicaid than what they normally are. Now, state budgets aren't that big as the federal government. We can all agree with that, right? So where are the states going to get the money? Well, they're going to raise taxes. All right. Now, the other caveats to the one big beautiful bill is that if you're a state that actually denies and follows the federal rule that illegal aliens can't receive federal benefits or federal money in any way, and that you stop giving them state money and state taxpayer funded money through benefits and things like that, basically eliminate your sanctuary policies, we might be a little bit more generous with you. There might be a little bit more leeway there. There might be a little sort of recalculation of those Medicare dollars. But in the end, it's still going to be a cut to Medicare. It's a cut to the federal funding, requiring the states to add more money. And again, where that money comes from is your taxes. They're going to raise taxes. There's going to be a lot of states that are going to have to make some hard choices and again, may have to raise taxes. Look at California. They're already bankrupt. again, I use the example, Gavin Newsom, it was a month and a half ago, Gavin Newsom came out and said, hey, I know I said we were going to be a sanctuary city. I know I said to all you illegal aliens, come on over and we're going to help you out and give you free health care. We can't do that anymore. Literally came out and said, we can't do that anymore. In my new budget, if you're on it, if you're a legal alien and you're on our healthcare estate Medicaid, you have to start kicking in $100 a month. And if you're a new illegal alien coming over in this year or the next, you're not going to qualify. We're not going to be able to give you any assistance, even if you are capable of paying $100 a month. We're basically cutting it off. Why? Because if under these rules, and he saw these rules coming, I mean, surely the governors and the politicians knew that this one big, beautiful bill was going to include this. They saw it and said, hey, oh shit, we're in trouble. We're going to bankrupt our state. Not that California isn't already bankrupt, but bankrupt it even more by billions and billions and billions of dollars. So they're not going to be able to cover that. So that's why you see Gavin Newsom moving, not only because he's running for president, but that's why you see him having more moderate stances on things like giving free benefits to illegal aliens. He's even changed his stance on transgender athletes participating in the wrong sport or the wrong gendered sport. So you start to see some of the stuff because it's starting to affect their pocketbook. And that's kind of like, that's Trump's MO. I mean, he's not wrong. You may not like it, but he's not wrong. People respond to money. They respond to, hey, you're going to lose money? You're going to take away my money? They're going to respond to that. So, one of the notable changes in the tax package was a higher cap on the state and local tax deductions, what they call the SALT deduction, all right, which the GOP increased to help secure the bill's passage in a narrowly divided House. With the revision, the federal government is projected to bring in about $128 billion less revenue over 10 years than the original bill, contributing to wider budget deficits. What that means is they were going to originally cap the amount. So if you've never paid taxes, and I'm sure a lot of you have, or maybe somebody else kind of does it for you. I do my own. When you pay state taxes, local taxes, well, the next year you can deduct that. It's deductible. That's what they call the SALT deduction. Well, the GOP wanted to originally eliminate or make that even harder so you couldn't take as much because they wanted more tax revenue. Well, they had to put that back in, and now because we're getting we're going to remain with that, normal everyday people are going to be able to remain with those regular SALT deductions, those regular state and local tax deductions. The federal government isn't going to get as much money by $128 billion, which if you read the bill, $128 billion is not a lot of money compared to what they're spending on a lot of stuff. All right. This thing is trillions. We're talking trillions, folks. It's funny that we're throwing the word trillion around, Used to be a billion was a lot. Not billions are nothing now. Reforms to Medicaid and other healthcare programs are estimated to reduce spending by an additional $97 billion over a decade in the House passed bill when compared with the Chamber's initial proposal, bringing the nearly total to $1.1 trillion. Okay. Again, a lot of that is the illegal immigration, the illegal aliens, cutting them out. There's provisions in Medicaid, which there's a lot of provisions in the Medicaid bill, which I don't want you to think that I hate the Medicaid portion of it. I do have some problems with some of it, but there's some portions of it that make sense. And finally, someone's putting it in writing. Like it requires states to go through their rolls of Medicaid every quarter, every 3 months, and say, oh, this person's dead. We should stop paying them Medicaid. Believe it or not, folks, it actually is taking a federal tax bill to tell states that they have to do that because they're not doing it now. And there's people that are deceased that are still getting checks because other people are fraudulently gaming the system and still taking that stuff. It happens. It happens wide. It's kind of widespread, folks. All right. So there's a lot of good stuff. But again, going back to the original story is the Congressional Budget Office and what they're saying. And again, they're throwing darts at the wall and hopefully they hit the bullseye. If all of a sudden the economy starts roaring, well, then tax revenues increase and they offset all of this stuff that being said in this report. And really, that's what it comes down to. It's this bill. There's a lot of hope. Any tax bill that's passed, there's a lot of hope that the economy is going to do well. Because if it doesn't, it really doesn't matter what's in the tax bill. revenues decrease, and we're in trouble. We're in trouble now. There's like $30 trillion of national debt. So when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to the One Big Beautiful Bill, I do encourage you, read it, understand it, if you have time, or just go back and see our videos where we go through a ton of it and kind of pick it apart and figure out, like, what does this actually mean for regular people? And decide for yourself, is this thing really helping me as an individual? Is it helping me as, as a community? Is it helping us as a country? Overall, what is the future of it? And then what are the implications if the economy tanks? What are those implications? Now, we had 1 quarter of negative growth. We're waiting to see this quarter to see if it's negative growth or positive growth. Because if it's negative growth, then we're officially in a recession. And once you hit that, once you do that, once you use that word, recession, psychologically, it has this way of tanking for a while. So hopefully we're not. Hopefully we've seen some positive growth. And again, I think with the back and forth, we had the tariffs, we had the tariff emergency, the tariff panic, whatever you want to call it, where it was a little bad for a little bit and then kind of bounced back. So hopefully the negative growth isn't there, and hopefully it's either even or positive, and we can kind of move on from there. But that is the big deal. And so people are out there, and they're Trump, of course, is criticizing the Congressional Budget Office. There are Republicans out there criticizing the Congressional Budget Office. Democrats are using it as a tool of attack. And really, in the end, folks, it's in the eye of the beholder. They've been wrong so many times. They've been right a few times, but they've been wrong most of the time. They usually get it wrong because you can't predict. You cannot predict a lot of these things, right? The Congressional Budget Office can't predict the economy of China and what that effect's going to have on the economy of the United States. It cannot predict it can't predict a war, right? Certainly, it can't predict any of that stuff. So to say that they have a real good bead on the situation, it's not true. And again, to say that they're nonpartisan, it's not true. So there we go. All right. With that, little fun news. Apparently, in case you missed her, Karine Jean-Pierre, famous for being, let's see here. She's famous, apparently, for being the first Black woman, lesbian, LGBT, whatever, press secretary. And I guess that was her qualification. Apparently, she doesn't like her job or didn't like her job. Apparently, she was, she's leaving the Democratic Party. Announces her upcoming book about the Biden White House. She's leaving. She was the voice of the Democratic Party, and now she's leaving. I wonder what that says. I really wonder, when it comes down to it, what does that really say about the Democratic Party? Again, I'm going to give me a second here to pause this because I don't want to play this. I don't want to hear. I had to listen to her so much, but there she is, Karine Jean-Pierre. I believe that Fox News used to call her Binder, or somebody on Fox News used to call her Binder because she had this huge binder she always had to look to for. But she was the voice of President. She was President Biden's voice. All right. Former Biden White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Wednesday revealed she was registering as an independent and announced a forthcoming book about her time in a tumultuous administration. Is she going to come out and basically said they were making her lie all the time? Is that why she's leaving the Democratic Party? Because they basically said, hey, we're going to give you this job. You're going to be the first. You're going to be a barrier breaker. But you have to lie your friggin' ass off every day to the American people. You have to ruin your credibility for the rest of your life to have this job. Is that why she left? Is that why she's leaving the Democratic Party? Jean-Pierre, a longtime Democratic Party operative, is urging Americans to step outside harsh party lines in her new book. Okay. Independent. I mean, she was the one drawing the harsh party lines. Like, if there's harsh party lines, like if she was drawing them, she drew the basic map of partisanship for the last 4 years. Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. Oh, I guess it's not going to be too flattering. And she's basically, again, it looks like it's a way to try these books, all these books coming out. It wasn't me. I wasn't the bad person in the White House, but you were telling us you were the face, you were the voice, you were the lying to us. You knew. Don't tell me now that you're some innocent victim in all this, and now you're trying to save your soul or do something for us. I left the Democratic Party a long time ago. Why? Because they wouldn't let me vote. You know why they wouldn't let me vote? Because all of a sudden I thought, oh, Bernie Sanders is going to be our candidate. Nope, Hillary Clinton. But no one, she didn't get as many votes. We have these things called superdelegates. What the hell is a superdelegate? People we put in place that override your vote. Oh, so my vote doesn't matter. Okay, got it. Cool. All right. And then again, it kept happening. It just kept happening. And again, no one voted for Kamala, whatever. Okay, I don't care how you pronounce her name. I don't care. No one voted for her. But all of a sudden, she's my representative now. She was going to be the Democrat. Like that, they don't care. They don't. That's what. So a long time ago, I saw her. I'm like, oh, my vote don't count. I figured it out on my own. All right. So until January 20th, I was responsible for. Here we go. All right. Decision about leaving the party didn't come lightly. Sure it did. Sure it did. You want to save your own ass, right? It's like you need a lifeboat. You need to make your own. All right. Joe's dying. You don't care about Joe. You really don't. You lied about him all the time. And if you cared about Joe Biden, if you truly, Karine Jean-Pierre really cared, if anybody really cared about the man Joe Biden, they would have come out and said, he's sick, he needs health care, he needs doctors, he can't do this job, we got to get him out of here, we want to prolong his life as much as possible, we love him, so we want him to be healthy and happy, and this is not happening. But no, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. All right? When my time comes, right, and I'm too sick to do anything, no, my family's going to come in and say, we need to do the right thing for him. He needs health. He needs doctors. Right? Because they love me. Right? They're not going to be like, no, keep working. No, keep doing what we're doing because we like our situation. So until January 20th, I was responsible for speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. Yes, you were. You were speaking on behalf. You were telling lies. At noon on that day, I became a private citizen who, like all Americans and many of our allies around the world, had to contend with what was to come next for our country. I determined that the danger we face as a country requires freeing ourselves of the boxes you drew, Karine Jean-Pierre, the boxes that you put in place, the boxes that you solidified, the boxes that you espoused day in and day out, over and over again. Where was this sense of honor and political bipartisanship? No, I don't know. Oh, you're out of a job now and you're seen as a lying sack of whatever. And so now you need to try and fix it. We need to be willing to exercise the ability to think creatively and plan strategically. Well, except for when you were in power and you didn't need to. All right. So I don't believe a thing this woman says. I think her book is going to be full of lies because that's what she did for a living. She lied. She lied for a living. So, but she's leaving the Democratic Party. What I have decided to do, she's so high and mighty. She's a warrior. She's a survivor. What I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. Why didn't you do that when you were talking to the American press, talking to the American people? Why didn't you follow your own compass, which said, I should tell the truth, or just say, listen, I can't do this job? Right? You got told to lie. You said, we're going to give you a bunch of money and fame to do this job. You're going to have to lie your ass off. And you said, no problem. And now you're supposed to be some sort of hero. That's what I've done, and that's what this book does. The way I see, there we go. The way I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is if you're willing to stand side by side with me, no, I'm not, because you're a liar and not trustworthy. Regardless of how you identify politically, and that's the thing, you call people of the other party disgusting names from the podium with the seal of the President of the United States on it. Don't tell me right now that you're this bipartisan, kumbaya, free love kind of individual. You're not. And as long as you respect the communities that I belong to, I do not respect liars. And vulnerable communities that I respect, you don't respect vulnerable communities because there's plenty of vulnerable communities that your administration did not help based on their political persuasion. Let's go back to the hurricanes and the FEMA employees that decided not to knock on doors that might have had a Republican sign in the yard and offer help. I will be there with you. I don't want you there with me. You're the problem. You're not the solution. I will move forward with you. No, please do not move forward with me. Stay right where you are, in the muck where you belong. So there we go. Karine Jean-Pierre, now hero of the Democratic and now independent movement. Please, dear God, this is the bullshit you put up with. There she is. She's just a liar. She lied. Is Joe Biden healthy? He's healthy. He's smart. No, he's not. Lied. All lies. So, anyways, I thought people might get a kick out of that. So, affiliation, switching the affiliation. So even their own mouthpiece is abandoning ship. All right. The other story I had that I thought was interesting, that's all over the news, is here. And this, people are going to hate me for this one because I actually have to side with the president, with Biden on this one. I'm not really siding with him. I'm siding with the Constitution. There's this idea that Trump came out with this idea or this thought on Truth Social that all the pardons that Biden signed with the auto pen are null and void. Okay. It's a perfectly acceptable opinion, except for it's wrong. There's only one spot in the entire U.S. Constitution that requires the signature of the President of the United States. All right. First of all, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, right down here is what gives what gives all presidents their pardon power. It is plenary. It's been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. They can pardon people for things that they might have done, for things that they have done, or things they may do in the future. It's been decided. It is the most overreaching, powered act a president can do. All presidents get it. President Biden has pardoned some people. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh crap, that looks terrible. So is President Trump. Let's see the Chrisleys. All right. But it's absolute. The power is absolute, and it does not require a signature anywhere in the United States Constitution. The only time a signature is required in the United States Constitution is for when a president needs to give his either veto or his acceptance to a bill brought to him by the legislature that's been passed. Other than that, nowhere. No, the president can basically just mumble, "I give that guy a pardon," and that guy's got a pardon. That's just how it works. All right. Yes, back when the Constitution was being written, half of the legislature or half of the delegates at the Constitutional Convention thought this was ridiculous. That it was like the power of a king, which it does. It goes back to English law. All right. And they didn't want it, but it passed as part of the sort of the compromise to get the Constitution through back when the nation was first being born. So regardless of whether you signed it with an auto pen, signed it with a real pen, didn't sign it at all, you don't actually have to sign anything for a presidential pardon to be valid. All right. Literally, all Joe needed to do was mumble a name and say pardon, and that's it. As sick as that sounds, as terrible as that sounds, as depraved as that sounds, presidential pardons, there is no mechanism, either in the Constitution, within Supreme Court case law, or within legislative law being passed that can challenge or overturn or put null and void a presidential pardon. It's one of those walls that you're just not going to be able to run through. All right. Now, presidential pardons only cover federal crimes and crimes that are committed within the laws of the United States. You can't pardon somebody for something they did in France, right? But even if you get a pardon from the president, it does not preclude state or local charges. So if someone commits a crime in the state of California and it's both a state and federal crime, yeah, the president can pardon them for that crime, but the state can still charge them and it doesn't count the pardon. All right. You can't pardon somebody for impeachable offenses. A lot of people thought that they're like, oh, president, if they try to impeach the president, like they said this about Trump, and then this is how stupid people are because they don't read. All right. They said, well, if you try to impeach Trump, he's just going to pardon himself. You cannot. That's one of the things you cannot. All right. That's one of the things that's outside that stone wall you can't run through. You cannot pardon people for impeachable offenses. All right. If you're being impeached, you cannot be pardoned. All right. All right. So, which is why Richard Nixon needed to resign to get his pardon, right? Gerald Ford gave him a pardon. He resigned, so he's not impeachable. Can't impeach someone who already resigned. So this is some of the clearest case law that's out there, folks. Some of the clearest case law that's out there. Some of the clearest constitutional protections that are out there. Presidential pardons, whether Joe Biden knew what he was doing or not, whether he was competent or not, he was still the president, and the only one with authority. So stop barking up this tree, because eventually President Trump's going to pardon someone you don't like either, or that people don't like and think it kind of feels bad. Like he already has. Like I go back to the Chrisleys, like these reality stars that had tax that stole like $36 million in taxes or something like that, or whatever their financial crime was for. It was for tens of millions of dollars. Why are we giving them a pardon? What, because they're friends? Okay, but again, that's the president's power. He has that power. He can pardon whoever. He doesn't have to give you a reason. He doesn't have to say jack crap about nothing to pardon whoever. He could pardon whoever he wants. He could come out tomorrow and goes, I'm going to pardon P. Diddy. And people will be all up in arms. Like, hey, how can you pardon that guy? He doesn't need to give you a reason at all. He could come out and pardon, whatever bloodthirsty killer that's on death row right now. He could pardon him. Doesn't matter. It's his power. He cannot be disputed. So the fact that we're at this point where we're challenging these pardons, really, that's an attack on the Constitution, where it's like, okay, either change the Constitution or move on to something that's more productive, right? And this part of the Constitution, you're never going to change Article 2 of it's just not going to change. It's not going to change. You're not going to get an amendment limiting presidential pardons. It's just not going to happen. So, but here it is, and again, who did Biden pardon? Yes, he pardoned Hunter Biden for basically everything he's ever done, everything he's doing, and everything he ever will do. He's got like this lifetime clean slate pardon. He pardoned his family members. Why? I'm not sure, but he doesn't need to tell me. He pardoned James Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden, John T. Owens, Francis W. Biden. Full and unconditional pardon. I don't know what for, right? It's like a preemptive pardon, right? But again, that's his power. The Supreme Court has ruled over and over and over again that the president has that power. Sucks. Yeah, I know. Pardon General Mark Milley. Why? The guy broke the chain of command when it came to the president when Trump was in office. Something you get thrown in jail for. But he got a pardon. Dr. Anthony Fauci. Again, someone who probably, if Anthony Fauci didn't do anything wrong, why do you need a pardon, right? You always say that. Again, they don't need to explain anything to us. It sucks. I don't like it. You don't like it. But he got his pardon, right? Members of the House Select Committee to investigate January 6th. Why? Because there was a lot of weird shit going on with that committee. A lot of backdoor shenanigans, okay? But they all got pardons. I don't like it. You don't like it. But again, people are going to get pardons all the time, and you're going to think to yourself, why? And it's just knowing that when you elect someone president, they may exercise that authority whenever they feel like it. Whenever they want, for whoever they want, whatever crime it might be, as long as it's a federal crime. So this is a dead issue, folks. We can keep talking about it over and over because it makes, it makes one side angry, one side on the other side angry at the other side for being angry because it sells advertising on the news. But in reality, like I said, there's no way to go with this issue. It's about as ironclad as you get. You don't get to change it. So again, that article, if you're curious, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. And of course, Article 2, if you don't know, basically is all about the executive branch. So, and if you want to know the shtick versus Reed, the court recognized that an exercise of clemency may include any condition which does not otherwise offend the Constitution. Okay? The impeachment part. And there's so many other precedents. It's Ex Parte Garland, it's 1886. It's unlimited. The pardon power is unlimited, except in cases of impeachment. All right? And you can forgive plenary authority to forgive convicted person in part or entirely, to reduce the penalty in terms of a specified number of years, or to alter it with certain conditions. So the fact that they're still kind of going over this and just kind of blows my mind. Blows my mind. But there you go. So presidential authority cannot be taken away. All right. I had some other things here. Oh, yeah. I had this other article on Karine. I find it funny that she's now the savior or just some hero. It's just, again, blows my mind. Blows my mind. So, but yeah. Oh, yeah, this breaking news. I haven't had a chance to read anything. They have not been releasing the scripts of these calls. Normally they do, because they're between two world leaders. But apparently Putin and Trump talked today for about an hour and 15 minutes. And Vladimir Putin was pretty up. He basically told Trump, hey, so those drones that Ukraine sent into Russia last week, yeah, we have to respond. And about 1 million Russian soldiers have died since the beginning of the Ukraine war. But Putin's like, no, we got to respond. So U.S. president says phone call with Russian leader won't lead to immediate peace as Moscow rules out ceasefire. So Moscow's already said there's not going to be a ceasefire. At this point, President Trump has done everything he can.
Very proud of the job that this group.
There are sanctions on Russia already. You could up more sanctions, but
not to do it. But
okay.
We have to take some of these things to find the corruption.
What are we going to do? We're going to pick a side? I don't want to pick a side. Yeah, you kind of have to be on the side of Ukraine because they got invaded, and I have total empathy for those people because they got invaded. But there's short of us going there and putting boots on the ground. I think it's come to that point where there's not much we can do unless we're willing to actually put our own soldiers in harm's way to stop this war. I don't think Vladimir Putin's going to stop one bit. I don't think he plans on stopping. I don't think he cares to stop. So here we go. So just the U.S. president, and this is The Guardian, so this is why they call it the U.S. British paper, who repeatedly claimed he could end the Ukraine war in 24 hours during his election campaign, did not attempt to discourage the Russian leader from retaliation, according to his description of the discussion on his Truth social platform. I don't think he needs to actually say that. He's already said that. He says, I just want people to stop dying. He said, President Trump has said that 1 million times over and over and over and over again. Saying it one more time doesn't make it any more true than it did was the last time. All right. So, again, it's a kind of a shitty way to kind of describe the conversation. He noted and said that Putin had offered to participate in U.S. talks with Iran about its nuclear program, which Trump claimed Tehran had been slow walking. All right, fine. In separate remarks on Wednesday, Putin once again ruled out a comprehensive ceasefire in Ukraine. There's going to be no ceasefire. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. Don't know how that's going to end up, but that's how it's going to be. Claiming it would just give Kiev time to regroup and rearm. While Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky described Moscow's peace proposals presented earlier this week as nothing more than an ultimatum. Okay. So, listen, folks, there's going to be an exchange of POWs and bodies and things like that. That's about it. I think, yeah, I do agree President Trump probably overpromised. I mean, definitely overpromised and underdelivered when he said that he could stop this war in 24 hours. But I think he's finding a much different Vladimir Putin. I think he's finding someone who's, once you start a war in Russia, either you're seen as strong or you're seen as weak. And if you're seen as weak, they're going to come and get you themselves and replace you. There'll be a coup. And Vladimir Putin's not going to give up his money. He's not going to give up his power. He's not going to give up any of that. It's Volodymyr Zelensky, he's going to have to figure out a way to win the war. And whether that's Europe giving him more weapons, Europe putting boots on the ground. Before the U.S. puts boots on the ground, I better see German boots, British boots, French boots, Polish boots, Greek boots, Italian boots. Like, I should see all that before I see U.S. boots. But then we have another problem. Most of those countries I just named are members of NATO. So if Russia attacks any of those soldiers, does that trip Article 5 of the NATO treaty? And are we now all obligated to go to war with Russia? Again, NATO, it was a good idea at the time. Now I think it just backs us into a corner. I really do. I really think it just backs us into a corner. These international agreements back us into a corner. This whole idea that, if someone bullies you, we're going to be there and we're going to fight. We can make those promises on our own. We don't need it. We don't need this whole minefield where someone does something to somebody and all of a sudden we're in World War III. Again, NATO, good idea at the time. So the article goes on. There's really not much. I mean, yeah, Ukraine sent a bunch of drones into Russia. Can you blame them? They blew up a bunch of shit in Russia. Can you blame them? They were just sitting there one day and here came the kid. They were invaded. You could not like Zelensky. You could not like Ukraine. You could not like the politics over there, the corruption over there. You could not like all of that. It doesn't change the fact that Ukraine was invaded. Okay? So Putin said, why reward them by giving them a break from combat, which will be used to pump the regime with Western arms to continue their forced mobilization and to prepare different terrorist acts? Yeah, so he's all about war. It's a war. It's a wartime footing in Russia. That's how he's seeing everything. That's every lens going through. There's no way, he cannot walk away, because the only thing that really should happen if the war ends, if this is a logical and just world, is that Ukraine gets back their territory. And there's got to be some sort of reparations paid by Russia. There's got to be something. But Putin's not going to allow that, right? Because he'll see you as a loser. He can't walk away with nothing, right? He can't walk away with giving up land. He can't walk away with giving up money. He can't walk away with any of that. Otherwise, they're going to execute him. They'll at least arrest him. And he knows that. And that's really what you're dealing with. So it's really, there's only one way this goes. And it's just, two ways. We either let the two continue to fight out, we feed them arms all the time, and it's just Ukraine, Russia killing each other until something happens to one of the leaders. That's it. Or again, like I said, boots put on the ground. Ukrainian officials said 41 Russian warplanes, including strategic bombers and other types of combat aircraft, were destroyed or damaged in Sunday's operation, where they sent just a bunch of just kamikaze drones into the air, which they claim had taken 18 months to plan. So, Operation Spiderweb. Interesting. So, again, it's just, you see some of the damage, some of the drone hits there. Again, you can't blame Ukraine. Their cities are destroyed. It's just rubble. It's disastrous. Some of those beautiful cities you've ever seen before the war. Go back and look at pictures of Kiev before the invasion. They're beautiful cities. They're destroyed now. Destroyed. So they had their talk today. It's really an issue I think President Trump's just going to... I really do believe Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and as now Interim National Security Advisor, J.D. Vance as the Vice President, anyone that's involved, Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence, are going to advise this president, and this president is going to take the advice to just say, I can't do nothing else. I've tried all I can. It's not going to work. No one wants to listen. I got to go on and I got to worry about my own country now. I'm going to go spend time with countries that want to actually have a dialogue and listen. Because obviously Russia doesn't want to listen. There's nothing he can do. He could again, Trump does not like Zelensky, so he's not going to give him any help either. it's really a bad situation to be in. But this president cannot help us. This president's not going to be able to get this thing solved. So it's a shame, and we're going to have to live with this war for a while. I think it's going to be a while. I think it's going to be one of those wars that just go on for 10, 12 years. Just going to happen. So, but yeah, there you go. There we go. All right. Transition back to me, my beautiful face. But with that, this has been Wednesday. That's your news update. That's my commentary. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the war in Ukraine will ever end? Do you think that President Trump can stop that war? Do you think Putin even wants to allow it to happen? What do you think of Karine Jean-Pierre's now martyrdom from the Democratic Party? And what do you think of the one big beautiful bill? Is it a bill that you think helps you out? Or do you think a bill that hurts you? Again, in the eye of the beholder, folks. If you're a bartender struggling to make ends meet and you can get an extra $2,000 a year, yeah, it helps you. If you're not someone that makes tips or things like that, yeah, maybe it don't help you. But let me know in the comment section what you think. With that, just the announcement that I think Friday I'll be traveling. So I think we're going to still do a live show, but it just might be from downtown. It may be, we probably will be from downtown Mexico City. And we'll go live on Friday and Saturday. Saturday, I think I'm going to be able to see my go to my toy market that they have. It's one of the largest toy markets out there in all of Mexico. So it's fun. And hopefully it doesn't rain too much. And hopefully we have some fun with it. Hopefully I think the last time we did it, we had copyright strike because they played music. I can't stop people from playing music. So, but we'll see. And, we'll see what's going on. I know there was last time we were in the Zocalo, there were tons of protests and things going on, a lot of political unrest. So we'll see. And then we'll see exactly how safe it is in Mexico City, because everybody thinks that it's just like the dangerous, oh, you're an American. You're in danger. No, I'm not in danger. I'm 6'1", 250 pounds. I'm not in danger. People look at me like, I'm not gonna screw it with that guy. Not that I'm some tough guy. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I look the way I do. People are just like, that's a lot of effort. All right. So with that, look forward to that. And thanks for joining us. And with that, I have been your Reluctant Gringo. I am going to go ahead and get on out of here. And I'm going to be streaming some video games a little bit later on, but I'm going to be working on some other videos today. But with that, thank you. And we out. Salud. A huevo.